have been the subject of litigation by people who were targeting and trying to take down their organizations. There was a lawsuit that was filed, Ben talked about it earlier, against the Fearless Fund, Aaron Simon's organization, and that lawsuit went to the Federal Courts of Appeals. They're litigating that right now. They struck down that organization's ability to help Black women. And Hello Alice is facing a different lawsuit, Kelsey's organization, where another federal court decided recently to dismiss the case against them that was filed by a white owner of a trucking company that said that helping Black people, giving grants to Black people was somehow discriminatory against white men. So let's talk about that. With that introduction, and President Johnson has been here talking about all these issues all weekend. So let's start with you, Arian. Tell us a little bit about the litigation that you've been dealing with in your capacity as a CEO and co-founder of the Fearless Fund, and how you're fighting back against that.
Thank you, President Johnson, for bringing, of course, this case that we're dealing with tonight. I serve as a CEO and founding partner of the Fearless Fund. We are the nation's first venture capital fund that's built by women of color, for women of color. Thank you. And with that being said, August 2nd changed my life, I guess you could say forever. We got hit with a federal lawsuit. They filed 3 things against our companies. A temporary restraining order. They were trying to put us out of business immediately. We got that withdrawn. They filed the case itself, which is against 4 of our companies. And they also filed a preliminary injunction against one of our grant programs. We won that preliminary injunction in the district, and we were appealed immediately after. And in the appeals ruling, they said that we were violating the law by having a grant program that was allocated to women, to Black women. That's where we're at currently.
Thank you very much. And Kelsey, tell us about the litigation that you're facing. How else?
They're similar, but a different legal context. So they filed sort of the story is that they filed the lawsuit because one of the people who were a member of our platform filed a lawsuit under the Trilogy Fund that said we were discriminating against white men because we didn't open the program up to white men. And the way our programs work is we typically have a partner that establishes the grant requirements that we go out and promote and we help to facilitate. And in this case, it was a very obscure contract law that they tried to file a lawsuit under, and ours was dismissed. And it was dismissed in a way where they cannot file appeals.
So we have one victory and one that we're working on making into a victory. President Johnson, the NAACP has been a leader in fighting for this, fighting for the integration, inclusion of African American organizations and support these groups. Tell us about what the NAACP is doing. Oh, you have a mic. Tell us about what the NAACP is doing to help support this cause.
So it's interesting for us because we have equity interests in Hello Alice as a company. When COVID hit, there was an outreach to us by Beyonce's foundation to help get some money out the door. And we knew that once we announced it, we would get inundated with requests because it's Beyonce, of course. Robert Smith's team introduced us to Hello Alice. We were in the middle of having discussions with him. And we used Hello Alice as our platform to get not only the resources from Beyonce's foundation, but it was several companies and individuals. And we have a huge community on that platform of African-American businesses. It's very large. And so we use the platform as a means to communicate with Black-owned businesses across the country. Because of the success of that, we were able to negotiate with Hello Alice an equity position. So the lawsuit against them really was also a lawsuit against our future potential in terms of our financial interest in the company. So it personally impacted NAACP because as we were looking at revenue streams, this was one of the areas that we were drilling down on. And then you move out and you look at what was taking place with Fearless Fund, you realize that this is a part of, you've heard me say this before, a 60-year strategy to undo the progress made. And I tell people, particularly young people, if we were not succeeding, they wouldn't be fighting so hard.
Right.
And because of the success, to position the Fearless Fund, to position others, to begin to attack the true structural barriers around wealth creation, there would be no need to do this, because fight for voter rights, we got to do that. Fight for health outcomes, we got to do that. But at the center of all of this is fighting for the money and opening up the ability for Black folks to truly participate in the economic engines of this nation is really important. And if you look at decade by decade, you can see the center of gravity where money has been made. It was in the Carolinas with tobacco. It shifted to the Delta with cotton. It went up to manufacturing in Pittsburgh, and it went over to Detroit with auto. Then it went over to Chicago with some steel. And then out of nowhere, it was the financial industries in New York. But over the last 20 years, the money is in Silicon Valley. And we got to get over there. And us getting over there is creating the Fearless Fund. Us getting over there is having interest in platforms like Hello Alice. And us getting over there will always be met with resistance, because that is going to be it has been the hugest transfer of wealth that we have seen in ever. Billions upon billions of dollars in Silicon Valley, and it's less than 1% of 1% of 1% African American participation.
That's a good point. To start off, I want to ask you about this area, because as Naacp mentioned, and you just mentioned President Johnson, less than 1/10 or 1/100% of venture capital funds goes to Black women or Black-owned businesses. And yet the idea of Black women starting a venture capital fund to help other Black women is somehow illegal now, according to the Federal Appeals Court. They decided this recent decision. How do you reconcile that? How do you explain to people, Arian, what that means, and how do we respond to that, and what you're doing with that?
I want to pick up where President Johnson left off, because I want to make sure that the audience fully understands the industry one that I work in and how this affects the whole. The technology industry is the largest wealth-producing industry in the world. The world. I work in a $62 trillion industry in VC and PE.
Trillion with a tree, not a B, tree, $1 trillion, I'm sorry.
Yes. Anything that's 150, 200, that's very micro in my industry. So I want people to realize the big landscape of what is taking place. The biggest investor in PE and VC are pension funds. Pension funds are built off the backs of teachers, firefighters, police officers, and a large community that looks just like me and you. The money starts here at the pension level. It then goes up to this $62 trillion industry that is 92% white male, that then goes to those startups that are over 90-something% white, and rarely does it go right back into the community whose backs it was built off of. People are not aware of how this even takes place. And they're using that capital as capital infusion in the tech industry, and then they go make billions of dollars off of this money that started right here. So for those in the audience, when you know teachers that have pensions, when you know people that have pensions, they are people of color, they need to start demanding that the fund managers allocate that money back to their community.
Right. Why do you think this is happening, Kelsey?
Well,
What do you plan on doing? Why are they targeting you for your organization? What do you plan to do? What are you fighting for?
so when we talk about this internally, we talk about it from the perspective of how we work a lot. What I always tell my team is, imagine if you had grown up in a world where by default everything was yours. And when we talk to people that are on that side, and you hear them say things like, they're taking our money, or they're taking our jobs, and my response is, who told you it was yours by default? And so one of the things that we do a lot of is trying to help people undo this mentality that by default it belongs. Because if you believe that, it's always going to feel unfair, and you don't understand where equity and inclusion comes into this. And so we spend a lot of time talking to people who actually disagree with us and helping them understand where that thinking is off kilter or off base.
And President Johnson, your take on why this is happening? Why are they doing this right now? Free. Yes. Exactly. You know, as an organization, as we have began to grow differently, when you step back and say, what's generating wealth in this country? And it was correct. The California Pension Fund leads the way, followed by New York, followed by Texas Teacher Pension Fund, followed by, and you keep on going. And when you step back and you realize who's putting into those pension funds today, it is majority Black and brown communities. Because we are working in government. Government is, we've been able to win that fight where we get access to jobs there. It's harder in the private sector, so we work in the public sector. And because we're in the public sector and these pensions exist and all the residual income, everybody runs to those pensions to borrow money to do their business. It's our money. And now we are at the tipping point to understand how all of this stuff is done. Even this complex, if you look at the capital stack, what they call it, I bet you that the capital stack to build this facility, pension funds. And we're thinking rich people are using their money. Rich people don't use their own money. They're using our money and they're hiding the paintball, and they intentionally don't teach this in school. And so that's why the Melanie Hopkins of the world, or the Robert Smiths of the world, or the Jim Curtis of the world become so much more important in this conversation, because they figured out how to navigate and say, oh, that's where the money is. And we have to get there. But greed will keep the fight going so we can never get behind it.
Thank you, President Johnson. Aaron, I'm curious about what inspired you to start this fund, and also about what message you have for other Black women entrepreneurs, or Black entrepreneurs, or women entrepreneurs who are out in the audience or out watching via streaming. What message you have to them to stay inspired in this struggle?
What inspired me to start the Girls Fund was that I was a college student at Florida University. I don't know if I can wrap it up. And while I was in college, while I was in college, I was actually raising capital for my main business. And I saw that a lot of investors just didn't look like me. And I made a promise to myself that one day I was going to be the business investor I had been looking for. And in the process, this like the Girls Fund today, which is backed by Morgan Chase, Bank of America, Ally Bank, Costco, and a host of other corporations. And the message that I would like to say, we do invest in Black and brown, women of color, co-founded businesses. But the message I would definitely like to say is for, not on the entrepreneur side, I want to see more people do what I do. And I say that because we can diversify that 92% white men that are in the space. If we can diversify the investors, we can diversify the investments, because we will reinvest in us. You know, so my encouragement is, hey, even if it's what we call like an angel ship, $5,000 here to a business, $10,000 there, I encourage you to be an investor. You can do that if you're not an entrepreneur. You can do that if you are an entrepreneur. You can always invest.
Kelsey, Aaron just mentioned that 92% of the venture capital funds are controlled by white men. White men are only 30% of the population. Then we have the group of African Americans here, Black people. What is your message to the people here in this audience, the people watching outside, about how we stay involved in this?
I think we've touched on this a little bit. I think for us, it's about learning where that change generates wealth. Because I actually was exposed to entrepreneurship at an early age. My grandfather was a carpenter and a home builder in Savannah, Georgia. And he always encouraged us, go be a doctor, go be a lawyer, which is the opposite of what I was seeing my other friends, my white friends' parents tell them, which was go home things, you be the boss, and you help generate the wealth. And so I think a lot of it is understanding what those wealth building mechanisms are, building the network and understanding what we don't know about building those and starting to learn those things so that we can participate in that $1 trillion business that we're in.
I have one political question, and really, I want to get one last question. Political question, I'm not sure if anybody wants to answer this, but I want to note something. If you get your responses to this. The judge in your case, who helped to dismiss the lawsuit against you, was appointed by Bill Clinton. The judges, two judges in your case, who allowed the lawsuit to go against your organization, was appointed by Donald Trump. I'm wondering, I know it's not a political conversation, but I'm wondering, President Johnson, maybe you have something you might want to say about this situation.
Elections have consequences. Elections have consequences. Again, I've said this over and over. It's not about the one election, it's the arc of elections. They set the table on how we manage our next move. And so they've been on a 60-year journey to get here. Part of the main pillars of what they were seeking to do was get control of the federal courts. And in getting control of the federal courts, that's district, circuit, the DC circuit, which is really crucial, and the Supreme Court. And so as we are seeing the damage to our Constitution done by the Supreme Court, if you go to the other levels, it is worse happening there. And so where we file lawsuits, or where lawsuits are not filed, now is a maze, a strategic maze, because you can get a good district court judge and a horrible circuit. You can get a horrible district court judge and make a decision with prejudice, so you can't appeal to the circuit. It's a maze now. November would only intensify the control of the court, or we will have an opportunity to soften it. And I'm really concerned of the districts where a majority of African Americans live in this country. In the former Confederate states, that's where they have a stronghold. And it's getting worse.
Last question. Theme of this convention is all in. What can we do in this room and outside of Washington to be all in to support what you're doing, Kelsey, and then you, Harry?
Well, for me, I think being all in is really starts for me with the youth, making sure they understand how these things are happening. Like, for example, this isn't like a 4-year point, this has been going on for a while. To look back at how the systems have historically been set up, you have to understand how the systems are being set up so that you can combat what's happening in the future. So I spent a lot of time working with kids and helping them understand my own kids first, and helping them understand why these systems exist and how we have to overcome them. And while we talk about elections in the presidential election, I tell them local matters much more. And they are not really engaged with that level. They know what's going on with the presidential candidates, but they're not engaged at the local level. I think that's a big part of it.
Aaron, what can we do in this room and outside those who are watching to be all in to support the Fearless Fund?
I have so much to say that I can't even say at this time. I'm more concerned about Fearless funds than I am concerned about the Fearless Fund. The elections are very serious, and like I said, they have consequences. This is a generational plan. I don't know if you guys have read Project 225. I don't know if you all have seen my court case. Everything is outlined as far as what the plan is, a reversal on civil rights. My encouragement to everybody is to hold all of your local, state, and federal lawmakers and legislators accountable. Right now, it's not just enough for us actually even to show up to just vote. We literally have to take action. We are in a serious state of emergency. And a lot of different rights have been discussed. But if you don't have economic rights, if you can't go get yourself a sandwich, if you don't have the right to enter into contracts, your whole future is basically taken away. And I don't think that everybody realizes the severity of what is taking place. So when you talk about us being all in, we are literally going to have to haul everybody like old school bus stops to phones. No, I'm being serious. Like getting buses and getting people moving. This, you have to realize that the fight that I'm dealing with right now, this is why they murdered Martin Luther King. The second he started talking about economic justice, they were like, yes, to stop. So this is very serious. They do not want us to have a dime. And if you reverse civil rights, we're in court right now on Section 1981 of the 1866 Civil Rights Act, which gave us the right post-slavery to enter into contracts. If you try to take that law away, or you're telling me that we're not allowed to enter into contracts at all, I think we need to be very well aware of what the consequences are and the repercussions to this plan that has been drawn up. It is that serious. So when you talk about being all in, no, we're gonna have to be all in for real. We're gonna have to bust everybody to the polls. We're gonna have to demand that our legislators that we are putting into office go to work on our behalf. They work for us. Literally, do you remember that episode of Scandal? What's that guy named Cyrus, the chief of staff? He got into it with Fitz, the president, and he said, Fitz said, I need you in here. You need to follow my orders. He said, well, actually, Mr. President, you work for me.
Hear that? We are all in. All in. Let's get to work. Thank you very much to President Derek Johnson. Thank you very much to Ariel Simone. Thank you very much to Kelsey Berger. And this is our conversation. We have another conversation right after this. Thank you very much.